An ominous symbol hangs heavily in the silent void, immediately establishing a mysterious and tense atmosphere. A heavy apology shatters the absolute silence as a mysterious voice regretfully addresses Viola. A shocking demand suddenly hangs in the air, abruptly requesting the formal dissolution of their standing engagement. Viola merely sighs in quiet resignation, reacting to the familiar sting of betrayal with profound, unfazed composure. Maintaining her absolute dignity, Viola calmly presses for an explanation as her fiancé shamelessly declares he has found true love. Leaning forward with cold curiosity, Viola prompts the hesitant man to finally reveal the true identity of his new paramour. The ultimate betrayal is violently unveiled as the man shamelessly confesses his undying love for Viola's own younger sister, Marietta. Marietta tearfully apologizes through her sobs, yet she vehemently refuses to surrender the man who dramatically awakened her to true love. Viola astutely observes the melodramatic display unfolding before her, quietly noting how this ridiculous situation unfairly paints her as the cruel oppressor. Weeping theatrically, Marietta passionately proclaims her profound affection, boldly insisting she was destined from birth to deeply love him. The fiancé swiftly steps in to fiercely defend his selfish actions, swearing his absolute, heartfelt devotion to Marietta. Bowing completely to the inevitable, he formally begs Viola to sever their binding engagement once and for all. With striking and unshakable composure, Viola simply and swiftly agrees to the scandalous proposition without a single argument. Marietta explodes with frantic, overflowing gratitude, loudly promising to find everlasting happiness with Lord Richard. Richard breathes a massive sigh of relief and solemnly vows to Viola that he will forever protect Marietta's happiness. Viola gracefully entrusts her dramatic sister to Richard, sincerely urging Marietta to finally seize lasting joy this time. A quiet, lingering moment of profound tension gracefully settles over the room as the dramatic confrontation reaches its natural conclusion. Absolute silence stretches endlessly across the elegant space, heavily emphasizing the sudden, monumental shift in Viola's destiny. Viola remains perfectly still in the aftermath, silently processing the bizarre and sudden reality of her newly liberated status. Far from being furious, Viola internally celebrates the shocking betrayal, feeling nothing but profound gratitude toward her former fiancé. A massive wave of pure relief completely washes over Viola as she realizes she can now remain in her cherished greenhouse forever. Viola meticulously hides her blooming joy, intelligently knowing it would be deeply unfair to Richard if she openly thanked him for the broken engagement while he looked terribly apologetic. Staring thoughtfully into the distance, Viola genuinely hopes that Marietta's notoriously fickle heart has finally secured the real thing this time. A somber, respectful silence falls heavily as Viola softly calls out to the cherished memory of her departed mother. Looking upward with earnest devotion, Viola gently prays for her mother to carefully watch over Marietta's fragile happiness from heaven. A few quiet days peacefully pass by, entirely sweeping away the immediate, scandalous aftermath of the sudden annulment. Arriving at a grand temple, Viola sighs heavily at the bitter, exhausting irony of returning here to process yet another spectacularly broken engagement. Viola cautiously surveys the heavily overgrown and entirely desolate temple grounds sprawling endlessly before her. Viola logically rationalizes choosing this extremely secluded sanctuary on the absolute outskirts just so she wouldn't be seen by prying eyes. Frustration rapidly mounts as Viola realizes the rampant, unchecked overgrowth has completely swallowed the garden pathways into oblivion. Viola stares in sheer dismay at the sacred spirit statues, completely horrified to find them hopelessly buried beneath dense mounds of fallen leaves. Utterly disgusted by the severe, unforgivable neglect of the holy grounds, Viola firmly declares the ruined state to be practically sacrilegious. Gathering her unyielding resolve, Viola fiercely prepares to take matters entirely into her own capable hands to restore the ancient temple's lost dignity. Realizing that mundane clearing methods are completely useless against this magical mess, Viola bluntly admits her current physical efforts are getting nowhere. Stepping back with a fiercely determined glint in her eyes, Viola prepares to dramatically unleash her deeply hidden magical prowess. Intense magical energy begins to aggressively and brightly swirl around Viola, blindingly illuminating the gloomy, heavily leaf-strewn courtyard. With absolute, unquestionable authority, Viola commands the fallen leaves to forcibly align themselves before chanting the devastatingly powerful spell Ferricul. A spectacular, roaring burst of immense wind and magic violently erupts from her hands, forcefully stripping the ancient grounds of their accumulated decay. The dense, suffocating layers of debris are entirely swept away in a majestic whirlwind, instantly and miraculously restoring the pristine beauty of the ancient sanctuary. Viola stands flawlessly victorious amidst the newly cleansed holy sanctuary, her elegant and overwhelming mastery of magic perfectly displayed for all to see. Viola firmly anchors her resolve, calmly signaling her absolute readiness to face the looming magical confrontation. Turning with lethal grace, she smoothly addresses the heavy presence lingering silently in the shadows behind her. Richard stares in sheer disbelief, utterly mesmerized by her breathtaking magic that resembled a violent dance of fallen leaves. Stepping bravely into the light, he openly praises her consistently overwhelming and awe-inspiring magical prowess. Chiding him sharply for his stealthy arrival, Viola demands to know why he silently watched instead of announcing his presence. Richard immediately defends his silence, confessing he was entirely paralyzed by the incredibly rare and beautiful spirit magic unfolding. Projecting absolute confidence, Viola assures him that his prestigious family's generational water spirit contract guarantees his future power. Startled by her unwavering faith, Richard awkwardly stammers out a highly flustered agreement. Shattering the awkward tension, Viola sincerely apologizes for the immense trouble before briskly commanding they proceed. The narrative aggressively highlights the strict magical laws, dictating that a sacred contract demands mutual consent for any dissolution. Within the prosperous kingdom of Recknard, every single formal vow carries an immense, undeniably crushing weight of responsibility. The severe consequences of betrayal are violently laid bare, revealing that breaking a vow instantly strips away all protective spirit blessings. Surviving in this unforgiving kingdom without essential spirit blessings is starkly equated to constantly walking hand in hand with death itself. The high priest swiftly finalizes the solemn ritual, permanently and safely severing the magical bond connecting the two nobles. As their names echo loudly in the cavernous hall, Viola internally braces against the profound finality of instantly becoming complete strangers. Facing her newly minted ex-fiancé, Viola firmly commands Richard to flawlessly protect her sister, a duty he accepts without hesitation. Turning her back on the shattered relationship, Viola strides powerfully away from the altar with her head held high. Pausing just briefly, she sharply reminds him of his impending wedding venue tour, noting Marietta's explosive excitement for the grand event. Shocked by her intimate knowledge of his plans, Richard bids a heavy farewell as the crushing reality of their permanent separation sets in. Walking completely alone, Viola fiercely celebrates her newfound freedom, eagerly anticipating a massively peaceful break from exhausting high society. The harsh reality of Richard's future brutally crashes down, highlighting the isolated, freezing, and uniquely demanding nature of the Logwarts territory. Desperate for vital survival resources, the Logwarts family sought a powerful alliance, but higher nobility violently rejected the burdensome marriage. Viola deeply reflects on her father's honorable intervention, heroically stepping in to repay a massive life debt owed to the previous Count Logwarts. Beyond mere duty, her noble father genuinely respected and fiercely admired Richard's remarkably sincere and gentle character. Staring intensely ahead, Viola acknowledges her notoriously ruined reputation for repeated broken engagements, realizing her father just wanted a kind-hearted man for her. Crushing her own sentimental thoughts, she brutally admits to herself that she possesses absolutely no desire to ever get married. Shifting her intense focus to culinary delights, Viola aggressively arrives at a highly acclaimed restaurant famous throughout the sprawling castle town. Scanning the prestigious gourmet endorsements, she confidently zeroes in on the top-class cuisine strictly promised by the establishment. A sharp, arrogant voice suddenly interrupts her thoughts, fiercely demanding proper recognition for his allegedly impeccable management skills. Viola instantly obliterates his bold request with deadpan precision, harshly warning that any praise would violently inflate his massive ego. The man dramatically whines about her immense stinginess, while she firmly stands like a fortress against his theatrical, overblown complaining. Taunting him with lethal playfulness, Viola fiercely threatens to withhold a prized item if he dares to continue his relentless whining. Exasperated by the ambush, Viola loudly complains she specifically chose this highly secluded spot to avoid annoying people exactly like Alec. Glaring aggressively at the extravagantly dressed man, she sharply demands to know what he is doing loitering in such an obscure place. Alec smoothly lies about coming to pray, prompting Viola to instantly obliterate his blatant hypocrisy since he violently rejects the gods. Narrowing her eyes with lethal suspicion, she aggressively interrogates why he would ever go out of his way for such a pious act. Dropping the saintly act instantly, Alec casually admits his true motive was executing strict, uncompromising business with the local priest. Viola sighs heavily at his predictably messy appearance, formally recognizing the nuisance as Alexis Recknard, the notorious Second Prince. The narrative brutally exposes his carefully crafted public persona, revealing the masses falsely worship him as a perfectly handsome and mild-mannered prince. Shattering the royal illusion completely, the absolute truth drops that he is actually an aggressively laid-back free spirit harboring deeply frustrating habits. Smirking mischievously beneath his elaborate disguise, Alec casually labels them as bad friends before demanding to know what she plans to by this time. Surprised by their unexpected encounter in the bustling castle town, Alec fumbles his words as a stack of hidden documents suddenly slips from his grasp. Sensing the dangerous shift in atmosphere, Viola sharply warns him to be careful since they never know who might be secretly eavesdropping in the shadows. Alec hums thoughtfully in response, casting a piercing, calculated gaze around the crowded area as he carefully assesses their immediate surroundings. Catching a highly suspicious movement out of the corner of his eye, Alec swiftly turns back and aggressively interrogates her about the mysterious object she just concealed. Ignoring her frantic protests, Alec ruthlessly snatches the hidden document from her grasp and promises to return it only after he takes a quick look. Scanning the crisp parchment, Alec's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as he bluntly asks if her formal engagement has been spectacularly dissolved yet again. Furious at his blatant intrusion, Viola fiercely demands he hand the private document back immediately since he has already satisfied his nosy curiosity. Sighing in absolute resignation, Viola confirms the devastating news, prompting Alec to sarcastically ask if her ex-fiancé shockingly claimed true love once more. Glaring daggers at the grinning prince, Viola aggressively commands him to stop spewing such incredibly stupid and insensitive remarks. Counting the ridiculous betrayals on his fingers, Alec mockingly suggests that reaching a grand total of 3 broken engagements implies Marietta is dangerously obsessed with her. Shaking his head in pure bewilderment, Alec loudly questions what kind of deranged person repeatedly steals their own sister's fiancé with such an intense, terrifying obsession. Leaning in with a condescending smirk, Alec playfully mocks her newly single status and dramatically offers his fake pity for poor, lonely Viola. Snapping back with fiery irritation, Viola sharply cuts off his relentless teasing with a fiercely warning tone. Instantly regaining her cold composure, Viola firmly declares she only accepted the political marriage to fulfill her father's wish and genuinely desires Marietta's ultimate happiness. Staring intensely into her eyes, Alec challenges her perfectly crafted stoic facade with a deeply skeptical whisper. Brushing off his piercing gaze, Viola proudly embraces her independence, boldly proclaiming she doesn't need marriage and will likely never discover true love anyway. Refusing to drop the heavy subject, Alec aggressively pushes forward and demands to know if she ever actually harbored feelings for the Count's foolish son. Flashing a dangerously charming smile, Alec smoothly suggests that genuine true love might be lurking much closer than she ever dared to imagine. Completely ignoring his romantic implication, Viola happily deflects by passionately comparing her ideal princes to fragile, short-lived botanical specimens. Her eyes sparkling with radiant joy, she passionately explains how watching her precious plants vigorously fight to survive fills her with immense hope and courage. Dropping his head in utter defeat, Alec lets out a massive, exhausted sigh as he fully realizes she is hopelessly obsessed with nothing but magical plants. Oblivious to his exhaustion, Viola enthusiastically launches into a rapid-fire rant about the incredible benefits of grinding plants into medicine, brewing them, and extracting their divine essential oils. Staring at her in sheer disbelief, Alec bluntly accuses her of secretly being a tired old woman trapped in a young body who only dreams of a slow countryside retirement. Crossing her arms defensively, Viola fiercely defends her serene dream, aggressively demanding to know what could possibly be wrong with peacefully tending to a beautiful garden. Completely flipping her terrifying plant switch, Viola's aura blazes with intense ambition as she passionately vows to travel the world and create miraculous new essential oils. Stopping her furious rant mid-sentence, a sudden spark of brilliant inspiration visibly strikes Viola as she loudly recalls a crucial detail about her beloved botanical extractions. Catching on to her chaotic train of thought, Alec smoothly mentions the incredibly potent, custom perfume she gifted him for his last birthday. Leaning in with genuine, undeniable eagerness, Alec formally requests that she craft another batch of that magnificent, custom-made perfume just for him. His usual mocking tone vanishes completely as he sincerely praises the incredible fragrance, openly admitting it was a truly wonderful and unmatched creation. The narrative vividly shifts to the Grand Kingdom of Reknard, where wearing overwhelmingly strong perfume at high society gatherings is a strict, undeniable cultural absolute for absolutely everyone. Seizing the moment, Viola aggressively questions if he also violently despises the nauseating, overpowering stench that permanently plagues their elite high society events. Wrinkling her nose in pure disgust, she fiercely criticizes the chaotic market for selling heavily undiluted perfumes that absolutely reek of chemical rot. Nodding in aggressive agreement, Alec confesses that the suffocating stench alone makes him want to immediately flee back home and permanently abandon noble society. Softening his intense gaze, Alec quietly admits that knowing she painstakingly crafted the unique fragrance specifically for him made the gift incredibly special. Flustered by his sudden, shocking sincerity, Viola immediately shatters the romantic tension by bluntly reminding him it was merely a standard birthday obligation. Swiftly recovering from the brutal, unceremonious rejection, Alec loudly claps his hands together and aggressively changes the awkward subject. Throwing a wicked smirk her way, Alec sharply warns her about her terrifying older brother's wrath before suddenly panicking as he remembers his own pressing royal duties. Snatching up his highly classified documents in a frantic blur of motion, Alec violently prepares to sprint away to complete his exceptionally urgent delivery. Watching the chaotic prince hastily retreat into the bustling crowd, Viola smiles warmly and mutters that he absolutely never changes before softly wishing him a safe journey. Smiling softly, Viola confidently assures the disguised prince that she isn't sad before he enthusiastically proposes a third consolation party. Pausing his frantic retreat, Alec suddenly remembers a crucial detail and pivots swiftly back toward her. Flashing a brilliant grin, Alec instantly upgrades his proposal from a gloomy consolation to a triumphant celebration of her newly broken engagement. Amused by his infectious energy, Viola completely agrees to the joyful idea without a single moment of hesitation. Sprinting away into the bustling crowd, Alec shouts back a quick promise to contact her later with the official party details. Watching his rapidly retreating figure, Viola quietly muses about the chaotic prince always violently rushing from one place to the next. A passing priest sharply scolds the speeding prince for running inside the sacred temple, while Viola silently thanks Alec for significantly lightening her heavy heart. Gathering her formidable resolve, Viola pivots sharply and prepares to formally report the scandalous annulment to her waiting father. Knocking firmly on the heavy oak doors, Viola formally announces her presence before stepping gracefully into her father's imposing study. Standing perfectly tall, she calmly informs him that the dreaded engagement dissolution has been safely and entirely finalized. Her father lets out a heavy, exhausted sigh as he solemnly acknowledges her deeply unfair but successful mission. The narrative dramatically reveals her father as Siegfried Hirstein, the legendary and immensely powerful commander of the Royal Knights. Revered universally as the heroic Flame Emperor, Siegfried famously commands a high-ranking fire spirit to fiercely protect the entire kingdom. Lowering his intimidating gaze, the fierce commander sincerely apologizes for continuously forcing such heavy, scandalous burdens onto his eldest daughter. Maintaining her flawless composure, Viola instantly reassures her guilty father that she is perfectly fine with the sudden outcome. Siegfried warmly encourages her to rest, openly declaring that she is endlessly welcome to stay peacefully in his grand home forever. Leaning back in his heavy chair, Siegfried heavily hopes that the rapidly advancing wedding preparations will finally force the chaotic Marietta to settle down. Nodding respectfully in absolute agreement, Viola softly echoes her father's desperate wish for her younger sister's ultimate stability. Rubbing his temples in clear exhaustion, Siegfried quietly confesses that a severe lack of peaceful sleep has been aggressively tormenting him lately. Frowning with genuine concern, Viola sharply notes his visibly unwell state right before he departs for a dangerously grueling expedition. Springing into action, Viola eagerly offers to craft a potent, custom-blended aroma to instantly cure his severe insomnia. Siegfried immensely appreciates her generous offer as she professionally interrogates him regarding any other lingering, problematic symptoms. Frowning thoughtfully, he heavily admits to suffering from intense nighttime restlessness that violently rips him from his deep slumber. Processing the severe symptoms instantly, Viola confidently promises to forcefully brew a highly effective remedy specifically tailored to his physical exhaustion. Smiling with immense relief, the legendary Flame Emperor deeply thanks his talented daughter while eagerly anticipating her miraculous botanical cure. Returning swiftly to her private chambers, Viola breathes a massive sigh of relief at finally escaping the suffocating pressures of high society. Her aggressively dedicated maid, Milia, immediately descends upon her with terrifying, overwhelming enthusiasm. Milia firmly physically corrals Viola toward the vanity mirror, fiercely preparing to completely overhaul her mistress's appearance. Desperate to escape the vanity chair, Viola firmly commands Milia to hurry because she urgently needs to reach the beloved greenhouse. Glaring sharply at the brush, Viola specifically orders Milia to entirely skip any overly elaborate or frustratingly complicated noble hairstyles. Clenching her fists with terrifying dedication, Milia passionately vows to create a flawlessly neat, work-ready style for her beloved mistress. Viola instantly sweats in profound dread, fully recognizing that Milia's terrifying enthusiasm guarantees an overly dramatic makeover. Milia aggressively styles Viola into a gallant crossdresser, openly comparing her fierce golden eyes to a famously handsome romance novel hero. Stepping back with immense pride, Milia flawlessly completes the striking, masculine ponytail to absolute perfection. Staring sharply into the mirror, Viola heavily notes that she inherited her father's towering height and handsome features, vastly differing from Marietta's delicate beauty. Shrugging off the aggressively handsome styling, Viola pragmatically accepts the fierce ponytail simply because it allows for maximum physical mobility. Striding confidently out of the manor walls, Viola immediately heads toward the massive, magically infused glass greenhouse. Stepping into the lush, vibrant sanctuary, Viola softly announces her return home to a tiny, hovering botanical spirit named Leaf. Smiling warmly at the glowing creature, Viola sincerely thanks Leaf for violently lending her immense strength to execute the devastating Ferrocol spell earlier. The adorable little spirit happily giggles and bounces in midair, immensely overjoyed to have directly aided its powerful master in her time of need. Smiling brightly, Viola warmly reaffirms their deep bond by playfully calling Leaf her absolute best friend. Trembling slightly, the tiny spirit sadly confesses his lingering fear of the terrifying outside world while wishing he could accompany her. Gently comforting the anxious spirit, Viola smoothly reassures Leaf that he never needs to violently force himself past his own limits. Reflecting on his mysterious origins, Viola recalls finding the amnesiac plant spirit heavily injured before graciously taking him in. Snapping back to reality with sudden urgency, Viola firmly declares that she must immediately begin crafting her exhausted father's special present. Pivoting smoothly, Viola directly asks for Leaf's magical assistance, which the eager spirit instantly and happily accepts. Swiftly gathering her potent botanical ingredients, Viola aggressively prepares her mystical workspace for the crucial crafting session. Explaining her specific plan, Viola decisively states she will forge a powerful healing aroma candle to successfully cure her father's severe insomnia. Curiously tilting his head, Leaf softly asks if her father is truly important to her, prompting Viola's immediate and absolute confirmation. Passionately declaring her deep admiration, Viola violently wishes for her heroic knight father to remain forever healthy so he can constantly protect the kingdom from vicious demons. Filled with immense determination, Leaf fiercely vows to do his absolute best since anyone important to his beloved Viola is equally precious to him. Taking a highly analytical approach, Viola sharply notes that they must violently strike at the root cause of her father's crippling insomnia first. Deducing the core issue, Viola logically attributes his intense mental strain to the grueling, endless exhaustion of governing while simultaneously serving as the Knight Commander. Frowning heavily, she violently blames herself and Marietta's endless, scandalous engagement breakups for piling even more crushing stress onto his already massive burden. Crushed by deep guilt, Viola solemnly admits that her chaotic personal life actively tormented her father and would easily break any normal man. Shaking off her heavy despair, Viola aggressively initiates the complex crafting process by blending multiple potent scents for maximum therapeutic effect. With flawless precision, she decisively selects soothing lavender, fatigue-crushing rosewood, and fiercely calming bergamot for her ultimate botanical mixture. Hovering close to the active workbench, Leaf cheerfully mimics her precise magical blending techniques with highly enthusiastic curiosity. Smiling in genuine awe, Viola warmly praises the tiny spirit for catching onto the complex alchemical mixture with such terrifying speed. Proudly puffing out his chest, Leaf happily confesses he knows the healing scent perfectly because he intensely watches her brilliant work every single day. Beaming with absolute joy, Viola warmly rewards her tiny, utterly reliable botanical assistant with a massive, heartfelt thank you. Ramping up the complexity, Viola aggressively structures the potent fragrance progression into 3 highly distinct, perfectly calculated stages. Unleashing the sharp top note, she masterfully infuses refreshing bergamot to forcefully clear the mind and violently pacify a restless heart. Layering the middle note flawlessly, Viola blends soft lavender to aggressively trigger deep, unshakable relaxation and heavily promote restorative sleep. The potent essential oils swirl violently together within the glass beaker, creating a mesmerizing, glowing amalgamation of pure botanical healing magic. Carefully controlling the intense magical heat, Viola meticulously manages the volatile liquid to ensure the delicate aromatic layers remain perfectly intact. As Viola calmly sets the glowing mixture aside to cool and harden, Leaf fiercely volunteers to flawlessly execute the final magical touches. The hot, fragrant wax pours smoothly into its waiting mold, heavily radiating waves of profound, sleep-inducing tranquility throughout the grand greenhouse. Establishing the ultimate foundation, the heavy rosewood base note locks into place, practically radiating a powerful, spicy sweetness designed to completely obliterate mental fatigue. Hovering dramatically over the cooling candle, Leaf begins to violently channel his ancient spirit magic to amplify his beloved master's deep, earnest feelings. With a blinding flash of pure, concentrated energy, the tiny spirit fiercely prays for Viola's healing intent to successfully reach her exhausted father. Dazzling spiritual energy violently cascades directly into the hardened wax, permanently sealing the ultimate, sleep-inducing spell within the beautiful candle. Overjoyed by the intense magical infusion, Viola sincerely thanks Leaf and confidently guarantees her father will rapidly recover his lost strength. Glowing with immense pride, Leaf smoothly accepts her praise before eagerly asking for immediate permission to craft one more identical candle. Graciously granting his request, Viola proudly watches as the highly energized spirit violently dives back into the complex botanical crafting process. With absolute precision, Viola flawlessly wraps the incredibly potent, magically enhanced healing candle into a gorgeous, highly elegant gift package. The scene aggressively shifts to the dark, heavily shadowed confines of her father's grand bedroom as the late night violently encroaches. A small, brilliant flame suddenly pierces the heavy darkness, instantly igniting the precious, magically imbued aroma candle resting safely on the heavy nightstand. Instantly overwhelmed by the potent, heavenly scent, the legendary Flame Emperor finally completely succumbs to a deep, profoundly restorative slumber. Staring peacefully into the starlit sky, Viola smiles warmly and gently prays that her exhausted father finally experiences a flawless, deeply undisturbed night of rest. Reflecting quietly, Viola acknowledges that her father's generous offer to stay forever stemmed strictly from his deep concern for her well-being. Despite her profound gratitude, she solemnly realizes that lingering in the household without marrying would inevitably turn her into a massive burden. Furthermore, she heavily concludes that her strict older brother would absolutely never tolerate her remaining indefinitely. Exhaustion suddenly catches up to her as she lets out a heavy, tired yawn. Shaking her head vigorously, she aggressively attempts to clear the gloomy, lingering doubts from her weary mind. Summoning her formidable resolve, Viola firmly declares she must find an independent path that actively avoids troubling her family. She smoothly settles into her quiet room, aggressively preparing to finally rest her exhausted mind. Smiling softly into the dim light, she gently bids her tiny spirit companion Leaf a peaceful good night. Exactly 1 week later, a maid rapidly bursts into the hallway to announce the legendary master's safe return. Viola sprints down the grand corridors with uncontainable excitement to warmly greet the returning hero. Beaming brightly, she enthusiastically welcomes her exhausted father home from his dangerously grueling expedition. The imposing Flame Emperor smiles gently, humbly apologizing for still wearing his heavily dust-covered work clothes. He passionately thanks her, enthusiastically revealing that he entirely used up her incredibly helpful departure gift. Viola humbly hopes her potent fragrance mist successfully provided him with at least a fraction of much-needed comfort. He warmly confirms that her miraculous candle heavily eased his troubled mind and finally granted him deeply restful sleep. Blushing softly, Viola nervously hands him another carefully crafted botanical creation while desperately hoping he likes it. Surprise visibly washes over his hardened features as he carefully accepts the precious, highly aromatic gift. In a shocking display of gratitude, he happily presents her with an incredibly rare stack of botanical books she has never seen before. Leaning in gently, he sincerely asks his talented daughter to continuously craft more wondrous items for him in the future. Viola gasps in sheer, overwhelming delight as she tightly clutches the incredibly precious magical volumes. The narrative ominously teases that her joyful acceptance of this innocent request will violently spark unimaginable turmoil later on. Hovering nearby, Leaf happily notes that Viola has radiated pure, unshakable joy ever since receiving the wonderful books. Viola enthusiastically flips through the heavy pages, completely mesmerized by the brilliant alchemical knowledge hidden within. She dives violently into her deep studies, aggressively absorbing every single ounce of new botanical information. She blissfully reflects on dodging high society entirely for 2 perfect weeks to passionately pursue her magical crafting. Sighing softly, she sadly realizes she has completely finished reading the very last gifted book in the precious stack. Humming thoughtfully, she intensely surveys her heavily crowded bookshelves for any possible open spaces. Frustration lightly sets in as she violently confirms there is absolutely zero room left for her newly acquired treasures. She fiercely refuses to discard any of her older volumes, deeply cherishing every single book in her massive collection. Scanning the cluttered shelves, her sharp gaze suddenly locks onto a highly specific, painfully familiar section. She glares at the heavy volumes exclusively detailing the isolated and freezing Logwarts family territory. She bitterly recalls exhaustively studying her destined locations for every single failed engagement, only for the immense effort to shatter in vain. Pragmatism violently takes over as she firmly decides she no longer needs the utterly useless Logwarts research materials. She intelligently resolves to gift the incredibly hard-to-find books to Marietta to heavily aid her sister's upcoming marriage. Grabbing the heavy stack, she aggressively pulls the volumes from the shelf to prepare for the swift delivery. Pausing near the doorway, she silently wonders if her chaotic younger sister is still awake at this incredibly late hour. Turning quickly to Leaf, she decisively announces her brief departure to immediately visit Marietta's room. Looking up in mild surprise, Marietta sharply questions what brings her older sister to her room so late at night. Viola graciously offers the heavy Logwarts books, sincerely hoping the rare knowledge helps Marietta survive the unforgiving, unfamiliar land. A sharp, ominous grin completely overtakes Marietta's face as she boldly declares her sister's arrival is absolute perfect timing. Initiating the crucial, high-stakes conversation, Marietta eagerly shifts the intense focus to a pressing matter, capturing her sister's undivided attention. Hesitating slightly but visibly brimming with electrifying anticipation, she boldly announces that she has something incredibly significant to reveal to her older sister. Building the agonizing suspense to a fever pitch, she dramatically prepares to unveil the deeply hidden item resting silently before her. Gesturing gracefully for her sister to take a seat, the charged atmosphere settles as they brace themselves for the imminent, grand reveal. A moment of profound, breathless anticipation hangs heavily in the air as the secret contents of the highly awaited unveiling finally begin to come to light. Shattering the tense silence, Marietta desperately asks for her sister's expert, uncompromising opinion on which of the presented options stands out as the absolute best. Staring in sheer, unadulterated astonishment, the older sister realizes she is looking at an expansive, breathtaking array of intricate, hand-drawn wedding dress sketches. Delighted by the phenomenal artistry, the older sister lavishly praises the lovely designs, prompting an enthusiastic, deeply proud confirmation from the young, talented artist. Overwhelmed by the monumental, life-altering choice of a wedding dress, Marietta humbly and desperately pleads for her experienced sister's invaluable guidance and advice. Analyzing the complex situation with keen, razor-sharp insight, the older sister knowingly reflects that Marietta typically possesses a fiercely strong, preconceived preference for these critical matters. Pivoting the intense discussion with calculated, piercing curiosity, the sister directly asks which specific, stunning design has managed to capture Richard's elusive affections. Carefully observing the chosen sketch with a critical eye, she objectively notes how Richard's selection perfectly and undeniably accentuates Marietta's innate, charming cuteness. Refocusing the immense weight of the choice back onto the bride, the sister pointedly demands to know Marietta's true, unvarnished personal preference regardless of external influences. Hesitantly but with undeniable, burning longing, Marietta finally points out the singular, stunning dress that has truly and irreversibly captured her romantic heart. Recognizing the timeless, heartbreaking dilemma, the sister realizes Marietta's deep desire for the elegant, form-fitting mermaid dress fiercely clashes with what traditionally suits her frame. Crushed by creeping, suffocating self-doubt, Marietta sorrowfully concludes that the dress hopelessly fails her style and tragically considers surrendering to Richard's much safer choice. Fiercely rejecting this passive, devastating compromise, the sister vehemently declares that Marietta must absolutely never sacrifice her own core desires merely to cater to someone else's superficial tastes. Empowering her fragile sister with undeniable, blazing conviction, she passionately insists that this spectacular, once-in-a-lifetime event demands she wear the magnificent dress she truly loves. Though powerfully swayed by the absolute truth of those commanding words, Marietta still agonizingly grapples with a stubborn, lingering shadow of hesitation. Probing the hidden depths of her underlying motivation, the sister gently but firmly asks why she favors such unexpectedly mature, sophisticated designs. Blushing with raw, heartfelt vulnerability, Marietta confesses her desperate, burning desire to reveal a stunningly different, undeniably mature side of herself to Richard. Struck by a sudden, brilliant flash of revolutionary inspiration, the sister abruptly halts the conversation, proposing they boldly use the mermaid dress as a foundational base and radically rethink its entire design. Quickly recovering her fierce composure, she rapidly apologizes for the abrupt interruption and eagerly urges an energized Marietta to furiously continue their creative process. Her sharp, calculating eyes suddenly lock onto a distinctly familiar object, realizing with a jarring jolt of shocking recognition the true, magical identity of the pen resting in Marietta's hand. Shocked by its completely unexpected, enduring presence, the sister openly expresses her profound disbelief that Marietta is still heavily utilizing the magical tool she assumed had been long abandoned due to its lack of charge. Overflowing with deep, undeniable sentiment, Marietta tenderly confirms it is indeed the highly treasured magical birthday tool that possesses the unparalleled power to brilliantly produce any color imaginable. Unveiling her quiet, unwavering dedication, Marietta humbly admits she painstakingly and secretly recharged the powerful artifact using precious magic stones just to avoid burdening her beloved sister. Deeply moved by this heartbreaking revelation, the sister gently but fiercely commands Marietta to bring the pen directly to her from now on, desperately urging an immediate end to their tragic, self-imposed distance. A profound, shattering wave of tragic realization crashes over the older sister as she painfully internalizes the devastating truth that Marietta had been sorrowfully holding herself back all this time. Plunging into dark, incredibly painful memories, she bitterly reflects on the cruel, inescapable reality that every single time Marietta fell in love with her fiancé, an agonizing, impassable emotional rift forcibly formed between the two siblings. Gripped by overwhelmingly intense nostalgia, the sister silently agonizes over how agonizingly, unacceptably long it has been since they last shared such a pure, effortlessly joyous conversation together. The suffocating weight of their fractured, incredibly complex past hangs heavily and undeniably in the tense, deeply emotional silence dominating the room. Unspoken, bitter regrets and incredibly fragile hopes violently swirl together as the two sisters delicately navigate the beautiful, healing emotional bridge slowly forming between them. Fueled by a blazing, fiercely bittersweet resolve, the older sister silently and absolutely vows to do absolutely everything within her formidable power to help Marietta before her inevitable, approaching departure. Suddenly snapping the heavy emotional tension, a voice urgently and loudly alerts Vio to a rapidly expanding, dangerous puddle of water ominously forming nearby. Startled by the abrupt, messy disruption, Vio violently flinches in genuine shock at the sudden, escalating predicament threatening the peaceful environment. Springing into rapid, decisive action to actively prevent the delicate, vulnerable plant roots from rotting away, someone boldly and confidently declares they will completely handle the dangerous, escalating situation. A stunning, explosive surge of brilliant, overwhelming magical energy effortlessly manipulates the threatening, chaotic elements to instantaneously restore perfect, natural order to the distressed scene. Commanding the very raw forces of nature itself, the spectacular magical intervention swiftly and efficiently forces the parched, desperate soil to furiously absorb the excess, pooling water. The intense, highly dramatic sequence finally concludes with a sharp, breathless gasp of pure, unfiltered awe as the phenomenal magical feat perfectly and flawlessly resolves the immediate crisis. Witnessing a sudden, miraculous bloom of vibrant flowers, the atmosphere bursts with an unexpected rush of magical energy. Questioning the beautiful anomaly, Vio warmly thanks the spirit leaf for the stunning botanical display. Reflecting on her bittersweet reality, she softly admits her lingering sadness over her impending, inevitable separation from Marietta. Diving into fond memories, she affectionately recalls how her adorable younger sister used to follow her around everywhere like a tiny, dependent baby bird. Acknowledging Marietta's occasional selfishness, Vio empathetically attributes those moody tendencies to the profound loneliness of losing their mother at such a tender age. Fueled by absolute conviction, she remembers swearing to fiercely protect her sister's happiness as both a personal atonement and a lasting tribute to their late mother. Sparking a brilliant idea, Leaf encourages Vio to passionately channel her deep emotions into crafting a meaningful farewell present. Embracing the inspiring suggestion, Vio enthusiastically agrees to create something truly special before Marietta finally departs. Pondering the perfect gift, she thoughtfully considers designing a highly practical item perfectly suited for everyday life. Shifting to a vastly different, festive scene, a lively banner boldly welcomes guests to an outrageous third broken engagement celebration party. Engulfing the lavishly decorated banquet room, the joyous, celebratory atmosphere completely takes over the entire space. Gathering around the massive tables, everyone gleefully settles in to enjoy the grand, highly anticipated culinary festivities. Commanding the vibrant room, the host proudly announces the arrival of the restaurant's spectacular, special full-course meal. Expressing eager anticipation, Vio confirms she will gladly enjoy the incredible feast without touching a single drop of alcohol. Basking in the establishment's glowing reputation, the venue firmly cements its undisputed status as the absolute best restaurant in the bustling castle town. Validating the intense hype, glowing gourmet reviews unequivocally praise the flawless, top-class cuisine served within. Fishing for compliments, Alex smoothly demands more enthusiastic praise for his undeniably brilliant management skills. Playfully shutting him down, Vio bluntly refuses to inflate his already massive, unchecked ego. Feigning deep offense at her stinginess, Alec dramatically accuses Vio of being far too harsh with her words. Brandishing a small bottle, Vio strictly threatens to withhold her precious creation if he continues his annoying antics. Instantly folding, Alec frantically apologizes and jokingly dubs her the magnificent goddess of scent. Regaining her composure, Vio finally presents the highly requested, meticulously crafted bottle of perfume. Sighing at his intense exaggeration, she briefly reconsiders handing over the exquisite fragrance to him at all. Panicking slightly, Alec desperately insists he was merely showing the absolute utmost respect for her craft. Dropping to one knee in a theatrical display, he grandly begs noble perfumer Viola to bestow the illustrious scent upon her humble servant. Rolling her eyes at his sheer absurdity, Vio reluctantly surrenders the beautiful glass bottle into his waiting hands. Swearing an intense oath, Alec dramatically vows to display the precious perfume as a lifelong, honored family treasure. Quickly correcting his foolish plan, Vio strictly orders him to actually use it before the delicate liquid completely evaporates into nothingness. Horrified by the mere thought of such a terrible waste, Alec solemnly promises to utilize every single drop with extreme care. Amused yet mildly exasperated, Vio bluntly calls out his incredibly dramatic, over-the-top personality. Dropping the relentless jokes, Alec seriously urges Vio to truly recognize the breathtaking wonder of her unique, phenomenal creations. Brimming with absolute confidence, he declares that he could effortlessly transform her brilliant perfumes into a massive high society trend. Reflecting on his immense power, Vio silently admits that the highly influential Alec could easily make such an impossible dream a reality. Admiring his spectacular achievements, she marvels at how his formidable trading company perfectly bridges the gap between royalty and commoners. Respecting his bold choices, she acknowledges his incredible dual life as an active entrepreneur who famously renounced his royal claim to the throne. Firmly believing in her exceptional talent, Alec passionately argues that her truly magnificent work deserves widespread, global recognition. Highlighting his strategic brilliance, Vio recognizes how he weaponizes his poor reputation among corrupt nobles to flawlessly support the crown prince. Humbly dismissing his intense praise, Vio modestly insists she is merely a passionate amateur enjoying a simple, creative hobby. Refusing to back down, Alec fiercely maintains that her intoxicating creations possess an undeniable, captivating magic. Dropping a massive bombshell, he casually asks if she has heard the rapidly spreading Royal Knight rumors regarding a mysterious, legendary fragrance goddess. Recounting the rookie knight selection trials, Alec reveals that the commander vigorously sprayed exhausted recruits with a magical mist. Empowered by the miraculous spray, the weary knights suddenly burst with incredible, unprecedented energy. Piecing the clues together, Vio realizes the mysterious mist is her creation and the bold commander is her father. Curious about the miraculous recovery, the energized recruits eagerly asked where the commander obtained such a magnificent item. Blushing furiously, Vio internally screams as she learns her father proudly claimed the fragrance goddess, made it especially for him. Pondering the bizarre situation, she quietly admits the extravagant claim might not be entirely wrong considering Leaf's potent blessing. Staring intently at her, Alec bluntly confirms his suspicion that she is indeed the elusive goddess. Leaning in closely, he aggressively expresses his immense frustration over the entire situation. Attempting to diffuse his intense energy, Vio gently urges Alec to calm down while acknowledging his deep appreciation for the scent. Driven by fierce ambition, he passionately declares his burning desire to be the absolute first to share her amazing creation with the world. Disgusted by current trends, he complains that overwhelmingly pungent commercial perfumes violently assault the nose at social venues. Nodding in complete agreement, Vio admits that avoiding those overpowering odors is exactly why she crafts her own fragrances. Remembering his first experience, Alec passionately recalls trembling with emotion over her soft, delicate and beautifully long-lasting scent. Revealing her meticulous process, Vio explains how she perfectly blends essential oils based on their specific evaporation rates. Exposing the industry's fatal flaw, she notes that standard undiluted perfumes heavily rely on a single scent that fades far too quickly. Grasping the full picture, Alec realizes this exact flaw traps people in an endless, suffocating loop of reapplying strong smells. Processing the profound societal impact, he firmly concludes that her revolutionary approach is an absolute necessity. Warning that continuous exposure to harsh scents will ruin people's noses, he urgently shifts his intense focus back to Vio. Leaning in with overwhelming determination, he boldly challenges her to change the entire world with her exquisite perfumes. Staring with piercing conviction, he firmly declares her work a global necessity and demands her immediate thoughts on the matter. Sweating under his intense aura, Vio nervously realizes she cannot possibly refuse the staggering pressure radiating from him. Sensing the overwhelming weight of his major trading company, she feels his unshakable confidence in pulling off this impossible feat. Stuttering nervously, she cautiously asks exactly what monumental steps they must take to execute his grand vision. Shifting seamlessly into a commanding business mode, Alec directs her to prepare several distinct perfumes specifically tailored for women. Relieved by the unexpectedly simple request, Vio easily agrees to hand the samples over once they are fully prepared. Struck by a sudden, completely different realization, she pauses as a wildly inaccurate assumption takes root in her mind. Beaming with a warm, knowing smile, she happily concludes that a romantic spring has finally arrived for Alec. Caught completely off guard by her bizarre shift in tone, Alec echoes her words in sheer, unadulterated confusion. Grinning playfully, Vio assumes he wants to woo a specific woman, completely ignoring his frantic, sweaty attempts to correct the massive misunderstanding. Chuckling softly, she teases him for framing such a simple romantic gesture as a serious mission to change the world. Sweating profusely, the flustered Alec stammers helplessly as he desperately tries to deny her incredibly confident, romantic assumptions. Brimming with absolute confidence, Vio passionately promises to craft a magnificent perfume guaranteed to perfectly capture his imaginary woman's heart. Defeated by her unyielding enthusiasm, Alec weakly accepts her help right before she abruptly urges him to eat their cooling food. Raising her utensils with a bright smile, Vio cheerfully declares it is finally time to enjoy their spectacular meal. A bittersweet wave of sorrow silently washes over her as she realizes their precious, secret meetings will end once he finds a real partner. The lively atmosphere gracefully transitions, bringing a quiet calm to a completely different, peaceful setting. A sharp, echoing knock abruptly shatters the silence as someone approaches a heavily closed door. Opening the door, a warm voice gently asks the hidden occupant how the intense wedding preparations are progressing. Stepping into the bright light, Marietta reveals herself radiating pure, undeniable elegance in her stunning, magnificent gown. Admiring the breathtaking spectacle, the older sister lavishly praises how flawlessly the beautiful dress suits Marietta. Radiating pure joy, Marietta enthusiastically credits Viola for perfectly designing her breathtaking wedding dress. Turning with a bright, loving smile, the glowing bride warmly calls out to her beloved sister. Gazing at the final masterpiece, Viola softly and sincerely praises the undeniably lovely gown. The magnificent, intricately detailed wedding dress flows elegantly, capturing everyone's absolute admiration. Suddenly noticing a specific floral arrangement, Viola freezes as she spots inappropriate roses at the grand wedding. Smiling innocently, Marietta cheerfully reveals that their estranged older brother specifically gifted her the beautiful bouquet. Reflecting on his prolonged absence, Marietta admits she initially failed completely to recognize her own sibling. Chuckling lightly, the naive bride notes how drastically his intimidating aura has shifted over the passing years. Stammering slightly, Viola nervously acknowledges the startling revelation about their brother's completely unexpected return. Processing the shocking news, Viola silently marvels that he finally returned to the royal capital after 12 long years. Realizing the dark truth, she panics inwardly, knowing those specific flowers tragically symbolize a fading, dying love. Sensing her sudden, tense silence, Marietta tilts her head and confusingly asks her sister what is wrong. Masking her rising dread with a quick smile, Viola smoothly lies that she merely admired the extremely rare variety. Pointing decisively at the bouquet, she names them Rouge Léger and urges Marietta to watch the impending transformation. Infusing the delicate petals with secret magic, the vibrant flowers immediately begin to miraculously shift their brilliant hues. Gasping in pure delight, Marietta watches in absolute awe as the magical blooms smoothly transition into a gorgeous orange. Releasing a quiet breath, Viola feels profoundly relieved that her quick magical intervention successfully hid the sinister floral meaning. An attendant abruptly interrupts the tender moment, urgently signaling that Marietta's highly anticipated wedding time has finally arrived. Sharp, purposeful footsteps echo heavily down the corridor, aggressively shattering the peaceful atmosphere of the bridal room. Stepping directly into the bright light, Richard arrives with breathless anticipation to finally claim his beautiful bride. Locking eyes with her handsome groom, Marietta blushes deeply under his intensely romantic, adoring gaze. Smiling fondly at the intimate exchange, Viola gracefully excuses herself to give the happy couple some much-needed private space. Walking quietly away, the older sister warmly reflects on how hopelessly and undeniably smitten Richard looks today. A dark, venomous voice suddenly slices through the hallway, cruelly mocking her for playing a pathetic game of house. Violently flinching at the unexpected hostility, Viola gasps in raw shock as a sinister presence completely traps her. Instantly recognizing the unmistakable, blazing red hair, a terrifying wave of dreaded familiarity washes aggressively over her. Stepping menacingly out of the shadows, her estranged older brother Raymond glares down with burning, unfiltered hatred. Swallowing her rising terror, Viola forces a polite smile and formally greets her long-lost older brother. Sneering with absolute disgust, Raymond ruthlessly accuses her of selfishly selling out her sister to avoid a poor marriage. Trembling under his crushing gaze, Viola desperately and frantically stammers a panicked denial of his horrific accusation. Aggressively closing the distance between them, Raymond viciously corners her with an incredibly suffocating, violent aura. Leaning in with icy malice, he chillingly declares that her unforgivable crimes can never be covered up or repaired. Piercing her fractured soul with a murderous glare, he violently commands her to never forget the terrible sins she committed. Leaving her completely shattered, the imposing man abruptly turns and strides fiercely down the dimly lit hallway. A warm, gentle voice suddenly breaks the horrifying tension, urgently asking the trembling Viola if she is all right. Stepping protectively to her side, her father softly comforts her and firmly orders her to completely ignore Raymond's cruel venom. Releasing a shaky breath of profound gratitude, she softly thanks him as they slowly and safely walk away together. Watching them blindly retreat, a furious Raymond violently clicks his tongue in deep, unconcealed annoyance from the shadows. Walking quietly beside her rescuer, Viola sorrowfully suspects her father's rare kindness is merely a direct reaction to Raymond's blazing fury. The heavy, suffocating weight of their fractured family dynamics aggressively taints the joyous atmosphere of the grand wedding. Opening the scene, a solitary figure stands in quiet, motionless anticipation of the dramatic events soon to unfold. Shifting the focus, the grand architecture of the vibrant venue sets an elegant, imposing stage for the evening. Immersing the reader completely, the beautifully decorated hall hums with the restless energy of arriving aristocratic guests. Highlighting the tense atmosphere, the dazzling lights cast a warm, heavy glow over the bustling high society gathering. Pacing the moment perfectly, a subtle shift in the air signals the imminent commencement of the grand celebration. Whispering maliciously behind their fans, gossiping nobles cruelly pity Lady Viola for her incredibly complicated feelings regarding the wedding. Shrinking away from the harsh, judgmental stares, Viola desperately vows to avoid standing out at all costs tonight. Realizing she has already been noticed by the crowd, she fiercely commands herself to simply endure the suffocating atmosphere. Overwhelmed by a sudden, nauseatingly strong perfume, she desperately wishes for an immediate escape from the incoming headache. Shattering her fragile, quiet isolation, Lady Isabella abruptly calls out to her with a sickly sweet, condescending greeting. Turning with a flawlessly constructed polite facade, Viola formally acknowledges the approaching, highly bothersome noblewoman. Groaning internally with deep regret, she laments that one of the most troublesome, heavily perfumed elites just had to corner her. Forcing a brilliant, unbreakable social smile, she gracefully thanks Isabella for taking the time to attend the grand celebration. Feigning deep, exaggerated sympathy, Isabella mockingly claims she came specifically to cheer up the grieving sister whose fiancé was stolen again. Sneering viciously behind her elegant fan, the noblewoman calls it truly pitiful that Viola must watch her former betrothed marry her little sister. Deflecting the toxic venom flawlessly, Viola calmly declares she is overjoyed for her sister and does not feel pitiful in the slightest. Patronizing her mercilessly with fake concern, Isabella practically orders her not to put on such a desperate, brave front. Sighing internally at the sheer audacity, Viola braces herself as Isabella immediately begins bragging loudly about her own perfect fiancé. Smirking mentally at the delicious irony, Viola keenly remembers that Isabella's so-called destined partner is currently enjoying himself with another woman. Startled by an abrupt, jarring shift, Viola gasps as the lively music and joyous dancing unexpectedly come to a dead halt. Dreading the sudden, oppressive silence swallowing the room, she bitterly curses her absolute, undeniable terrible luck. Breaking the heavy, suffocating tension, Alec boldly approaches and casually calls out to her using her highly intimate nickname. Shocked by his brazen, unpredictable behavior, she silently panics over him addressing her so familiarly in a crowded room. Stepping protectively forward to intervene, he formally asks a completely stunned Isabella if he can borrow Viola for a brief moment. Flustered by his immense, imposing presence, Isabella immediately bows and quickly excuses herself from His Highness Alexis. Reaching out with unwavering, absolute confidence, he gently offers his hand to guide her away from the toxic environment. Maintaining her polite social smile through sheer willpower, Viola greets His Highness while internally screaming about his recklessly familiar public greeting. Leaning in dangerously close, he smoothly asks to slip away while she frantically worries about how incredibly unnatural this all looks. Agreeing to his daring request, she quietly wonders what on earth has suddenly gotten into the usually composed prince. Smiling with undeniable, captivating charm, he effortlessly leads her through the rapidly parting sea of bewildered nobles. Leaning closer to her ear, he gently reminds her that she absolutely does not need to hide her true self anymore. Buzzing with frantic, uncontrollable curiosity, the massive crowd wildly gossips about Prince Alexis inviting a supposedly broken-hearted woman. Dismissing the swirling, chaotic rumors completely, he cheerfully urges her forward without a single ounce of hesitation. Trapped squarely by unbreakable royal protocol, she realizes there is absolutely no way she can refuse his highly public invitation. Crying internally over her utterly shattered plans, she hilariously mourns her completely failed attempt to remain unnoticed at the party. Escaping the oppressive, suffocating ballroom, they walk comfortably together down a quiet, beautifully lit palace corridor. Leaving the chaotic drama far behind them, a peaceful, intimate silence slowly settles between the two close companions. Breaking the quiet atmosphere gently, Alec turns and softly asks if his bold, sudden actions have made her angry. Smiling honestly at his concern, she admits she isn't angry but was genuinely surprised by his incredibly unexpected intervention. Laughing brightly at the absurdity, he playfully apologizes for causing a massive scene by talking to her out of the blue. Discussing the impeccable reputation of the second prince, the surrounding crowd murmurs that any unexpected action from someone with absolutely no romantic rumors would be incredibly significant. Cutting directly through the swirling aristocratic gossip, Alec firmly and passionately declares to Vio that he has actually been waiting for this very moment all along. Stunned by his intense, unwavering gaze, a profoundly confused Vio desperately questions what he could possibly mean by waiting. Shattering the long-established boundaries of their friendship, Alec boldly and unequivocally confesses his deep, unyielding love for her. The immense, suffocating weight of his sudden romantic declaration hangs heavily in the silent air, completely shifting the dynamic between them. Gasping in sheer, unadulterated shock, Vio stares at him with wide eyes as her mind desperately attempts to process the staggering revelation. Frantically, completely denying the impossible situation, she vehemently questions his confession, insisting aloud that they are nothing more than troublesome, bickering friends. Desperately grasping for a logical counterargument to his romantic claims, she quickly reminds him of his previous statement about a specific woman he wanted to gift her custom perfume to. Effortlessly clearing up the massive misunderstanding, Alec calmly explains that he actually gave the exquisite fragrance to his little sister, hoping she would actively publicize it for him. Processing this abrupt revelation, a profoundly embarrassed Vio awkwardly realizes that her incredibly vivid romantic assumptions were entirely based on a massive misunderstanding. Elaborating on his brilliant strategic move, Alec notes that while his sister is notoriously particular, her undisputed status as a prominent trendsetter meant that if she liked it, word would rapidly spread. Brimming with nervous, uncontrollable curiosity regarding her delicate creation, Vio eagerly presses him to reveal the final, definitive result of his sister's strict evaluation. Smiling with undeniable, immense satisfaction, Alec warmly confirms that his sister seemed to absolutely adore the scent and enthusiastically uses it every single day. Overwhelmed by the staggering, monumental success, Vio quietly marvels at the surreal, dreamlike reality of having her humble work officially recognized by the highly esteemed Lady Sylphie. A brief, contemplative silence gracefully envelopes them as the immense magnitude of their shared, incredible triumph slowly settles in. Shifting the vibrant atmosphere back to a deeply intimate, serious tone, Alec softly calls out Vio's name to command her absolute, undivided attention. Leaning in with an aura of absolute, unshakable determination, he braces himself to ask the most critical, life-altering question of his entire existence. Staring deeply into her stunned, wide eyes, Alec firmly and passionately asks Vio to marry him. The world seemingly grinds to an absolute halt as his monumental, completely unexpected marriage proposal aggressively echoes in the quiet space between them. Rendered entirely speechless by the staggering weight of the moment, Vio remains utterly frozen, desperately grappling with the colossal implications. Plunging into deep, turbulent introspection, she silently agonizes in pure disbelief over the shocking realization that Alec actually harbors such intense romantic feelings. Frantically searching her fragmented, chaotic memories, she quietly and desperately wonders exactly when his casual friendship blossomed into this fierce love. Struggling immensely to formulate a coherent response, she stammers weakly, completely overwhelmed by the profound depth of his unexpected devotion. The narrative seamlessly transitions, sweeping back through the vast corridors of time to reveal a deeply significant, hidden memory from the distant past. Frustrated by an infinitely strict older sibling, a fiercely pouting young girl forcefully scribbles on paper, bitterly complaining that her brother is absolutely always angry. Expressing genuine, heartfelt disappointment, she passionately laments that she went through immense, painstaking trouble to specially prepare a thoughtful gift for her big brother. Peeking over her shoulder with bright, innocent curiosity, a young boy notes the highly interesting picture and warmly asks who it depicts. Startled by his sudden, completely unexpected appearance, the young girl briefly pauses her furious sketching to stare at the inquisitive new arrival. Gathering her scattered, frustrated thoughts, she silently prepares to vent her deep, bubbling family frustrations to this strange, friendly listener. Pointing aggressively at her masterpiece, she confidently declares it represents her big brother's terrifying, furious face, directly comparing him to a genuinely scary ogre. Explaining her pure, innocent logic, she notes that since he relentlessly studies all day, she thoughtfully gifted him a recreational ball for his birthday to encourage much-needed exercise. Mimicking his harsh, commanding tone perfectly, she reveals he angrily scolded her to stop playing all the time and ruthlessly focus on her own studies. Giggling uncontrollably at the absurd memory, She notes how hilariously angry he gets even when receiving a present, immediately, effortlessly finding humor in her sibling dynamic. As panicked adult voices echo in the distant background, desperately searching for the missing prince, the young boy laughs joyously at her story. Bonding instantly over their shared familial struggles, the young boy warmly notes that she seemingly endures her own complex troubles with siblings, while begging her to keep his hiding spot a secret so he avoids getting scolded again. Recognizing a kindred, mischievous spirit in her new companion, the young girl tilts her head and playfully asks if he also carries heavy, secret worries. Flashing a brilliant, surprised realization, the young boy happily recognizes her sharp intuition, feeling entirely at ease in her comforting presence. Brimming with eager, boundless excitement, she immediately and enthusiastically urges him to share his deepest secrets. Leaning in closely with a hushed, conspiratorial tone, he fiercely demands that whatever he reveals must absolutely remain a highly guarded secret between them. Sealing their newfound, unbreakable bond of friendship, the two runaway children share a quiet, magical moment of mutual trust that will last a lifetime. Reflecting on his undeniable feelings, Alex softly admits that his initial attraction might have actually been love at first sight. Nostalgically recalling their past, Vio deeply cherishes how he genuinely talked and laughed with her without any hidden motives. Desperately rationalizing their powerful bond, she quickly insists that their special connection remains purely platonic. Panicking at the sudden escalation, she vehemently argues that they absolutely do not need to get married just because they are close. Fearing a painful fallout, she confesses her deep reluctance to ruin their comfortable relationship with messy, unnecessary romantic emotions. Cynically breaking down romance, she points out how easily engaged or married couples drift apart once their fleeting love inevitably cools. Suddenly commanding her absolute attention, Alec firmly orders a startled Vio to look directly into his piercing eyes. Holding her gaze with unbreakable focus, he silently forces her to confront the profound seriousness of his romantic declaration. Trembling slightly under his intense stare, a flustered Vio nervously asks why he is suddenly looking at her with such overwhelming gravity. Alec boldly reveals that he had meticulously planned to propose the exact moment he could formally renounce his right to the throne. He bitterly recounts his sheer frustration upon returning from his grueling frontier mission only to discover she was already engaged to another man. Blazing with unwavering conviction, he passionately declares that he absolutely refuses to live with any more painful regrets. Shattering the comfortable illusion of their platonic bond, he definitively states that merely being friends is no longer enough for him. The suffocating weight of his deeply entrenched, undeniable romantic feelings violently crashes over Vio's fragile emotional defenses. Stricken with sudden, crushing guilt, Vio painfully realizes that her previous careless words deeply wounded his fiercely devoted heart. Panicking over the terrifying risk of losing him entirely, she silently agonizes over what would happen if his intense love eventually faded after marriage. Struggling immensely to find the right words, she tentatively attempts to voice her brutally honest, highly conflicting feelings. Stripping away all pretense, she bluntly confesses her absolute lack of understanding when it comes to the complex intricacies of love and romance. Desperately clinging to their familiar dynamic, she passionately asks if they can just keep laughing and doing stupid things together forever as friends. Fearing the inevitable destruction of their precious bond by messy emotions, she vehemently insists she would much rather remain safely in the friend zone. Confused by her incredibly convoluted logic, Alex sharply questions if her intense hesitation stems from finding him physically repulsive. Immediately shutting down his ridiculous assumption, Vio points out that if she truly didn't care, she would have easily accepted the proposal without hesitation. Pausing to process her wildly contradictory statement, Alex stares at her in sheer, bewildered silence as the tension thickens. Furrowing his brow in profound confusion, he desperately asks her to explain exactly what her baffling, complicated words are supposed to mean. Completely misunderstanding the romantic tension, she brightly concludes that a loveless marriage would be perfect since he wouldn't mind her diving entirely into her hobbies. Struck by the sheer absurdity of her hyper-practical, romance-free logic, Alec desperately tries to stifle a sudden, massive burst of laughter. Blushing deeply with embarrassment, a flustered Vio nervously asks if it is horribly rude for him to laugh at her completely serious proposal. Chuckling warmly, Alec tenderly explains that her bizarre reaction flawlessly proves her previous, heavily arranged engagements weren't actually special to her at all. Smiling with absolute, unfiltered joy, He happily admits that just knowing she holds no lingering romantic attachments to her past fiancés makes him incredibly glad. Shifting the conversation with calculated precision, he casually asks if she remembers a specific, highly admired territory called Ciel Rosen. Vio eagerly recalls the famous recuperation land, marveling at its breathtakingly beautiful gardens located directly on the royal family's private estate. Leaning in with an incredibly confident, dashing smile, Alec boldly promises that he could effortlessly take her to that dreamlike sanctuary. Escalating his grand romantic gesture, he passionately declares that they could actually live together permanently in that magnificent paradise. Revealing his ultimate trump card, he proudly announces that he was officially awarded the prestigious title of Duke of Ciel Rosen as a direct reward for his grueling missions. Utterly bewildered by the staggering revelation, Vio gasps in sheer shock at the insane idea of him owning the royal family's exclusive summer resort. Frantically processing the impossible timeline, she questions why he received such an overwhelmingly massive reward for merely 3 years of frontier duty. Flexing his immense dedication, Alec proudly declares that securing this dream territory was the absolute best thing he could possibly do for her. Rejecting his staggering self-sacrifice, she fiercely scolds him, insisting he should have selfishly used the hard-earned reward entirely for his own benefit. Defending his bold choices, he passionately explains his burning desire to be officially recognized solely for his own formidable abilities rather than his royal bloodline. Expressing deep, heartfelt gratitude for his overwhelming concern, Vio warmly acknowledges that his strategic actions successfully prevented a dreaded, forced royal engagement. Shocked by his sudden devotion, Viola asks why he would go to such incredible lengths for her. Alec recalls the moment her engagement shattered, noting how she acted strong despite her visibly trembling shoulders. Confessing his past powerlessness, he admits he desperately wanted to embrace her and banish her sorrow immediately. From that fateful day forward, he solemnly vowed to forge himself into a man capable of protecting her. His intense, unwavering gaze holds hers as the heavy weight of his heartfelt confession anchors the moment. Dropping his head in absolute submission, he begs Viola to grant him one final, precious favor. He earnestly asks for the undeniable right to stand proudly by her side as her chosen partner. Overwhelmed by his sincere declaration, Viola stares down at the kneeling prince in breathless, utter disbelief. A warm, hopeful smile finally graces Alec's face as he looks up at her, patiently awaiting her answer. Promising to support her passion entirely, he vows to use all his might so she can freely enjoy perfumery. He passionately declares he will work endlessly to gather absolutely everything she could ever wish for. Offering her a luxurious life with spirit beasts and floating gardens, he excitedly lists the wealth amassed for her sake. Taken aback by his overwhelming enthusiasm, Viola watches him ramble with a mix of utter shock and amusement. Seeing an imaginary puppy tail wagging behind him, Viola softens completely at his eager, whining demeanor. Finally relenting with a deep sigh, she gently tells him she completely understands his passionate feelings. Panicking slightly at the optics of a kneeling prince, she hurriedly urges him to stand up before a scandal erupts. Conceding to his relentless devotion, she agrees to give him the dishonorable title of fiancé if he truly wants it. Beaming with pure joy, Alec calls it the greatest honor and eagerly confirms if she truly means her words. Raising a single finger, Viola abruptly halts his excitement to set one firm, unyielding condition on their arrangement. Blushing softly, she asks him to give her enough time to properly prepare her heart for this monumental shift. Smiling tenderly at his newly minted fiancée, Alec graciously accepts her terms and thanks her from the bottom of his heart. Before she can fully process the moment, he leans in closely and requests just one immediate, tiny indulgence. Swiftly closing the distance between them, he gently takes her delicate hand into his own with breathless reverence. Pressing a tender, lingering kiss to her fingertip, he physically seals their new promise with a silent vow. Mesmerized by the sight of his magic's color adorning her finger, he whispers that this beautiful reality feels like a dream. A deep, passionate intensity flares in his eyes as he stares hungrily at the magic ring marking her as his. Noting how the amethyst purple perfectly matches his striking eyes, Viola chuckles nervously under his intense, burning gaze. A sudden chill of realization washes over Viola as she wonders if Alec secretly harbors a dangerously strong possessive streak. A dark memory suddenly surfaces, shifting to a young Viola proudly presenting homegrown blue star flowers to her bedridden mother. The fragile mother questions if Viola came alone, while the eager child explains she wanted to bring her favorite blooms. Though the mother weakly claims to be very happy, a chilling shadow of despair falls over her face. Gasping for breath as the strong floral scent fills the stagnant air, her mother's frail body begins to tragically fail. With a pained, heartbreaking smile, her dying mother thanks young Viola one final time before collapsing completely. The harsh, accusatory words echo violently in young Viola's mind, permanently branding her as the murderer of her own mother. Sobbing uncontrollably, the young girl desperately tries to justify her innocent gift to the mother who always loved flowers. Paralyzed by agonizing grief, young Viola stammers helplessly as the devastating weight of her lethal mistake crashes down. A cruel voice shatters her world, revealing that outside air was fatal and her mother's beloved flowers were actually all artificial. Furious hands violently crush the very blue star flowers she brought, reducing her innocent, loving gesture to ruined petals. A haunting chorus of endless apologies spirals through Viola's fragile mind as the traumatic guilt consumes her entirely. Drowning in an inescapable abyss of sorrow, the tragic memory fades out on her desperate, heart-wrenching pleas for forgiveness. A moment of absolute silence blankets the scene as a young woman rests peacefully in bed. Sunlight streams brightly into the quiet bedroom, signaling the start of a brand new morning. Slowly opening her tired eyes, Viola wakes abruptly from her deep, unsettling slumber. Waking from a dark dream about her past, Viola wonders if talking with Alec unexpectedly triggered those painful memories. Shaking off the lingering sadness, she decides to hastily wash her face before her maid Milia arrives. Splashing cold water on her face, she stares deeply and intensely at her own reflection in the mirror. Water drips softly from her chin as she bravely braces herself for the unpredictable day ahead. Taking a deep breath, she calmly and meticulously pats her face dry with a soft towel. Fully awake now, she straightens her posture and quickly regains her usual composed demeanor. A sudden, urgent knocking violently shatters the peaceful morning stillness. Startled by the abrupt noise, Viola glances anxiously toward her heavy wooden bedroom door. Footsteps echo loudly outside, indicating someone is pacing frantically in the nearby hallway. Calling out her name with immense urgency, a familiar masculine voice frantically demands to know if she is inside. Recognizing the panicked tone instantly, Viola calls out to her father in complete and utter confusion. Rushing to throw open the door, she anxiously asks her breathless father what could possibly be wrong. Thrusting a crumpled newspaper toward her face, her father desperately demands to know if the shocking headline is true. Gasping in pure shock, Viola stares wide-eyed at the unbelievable words printed boldly on the front page. The massive newspaper print completely dominates her vision, making her racing heart pound wildly. Her trembling hands carefully take the paper to read the staggering public announcement for herself. The dramatic headline loudly proclaims that second Prince Alexis Recknard's 10-year unrequited love has finally culminated in a grand engagement. Speculative rumors run rampant across the page, boldly suggesting that a spectacular royal wedding might be imminent. To her absolute horror, the article officially names Viola Hirstein of the Hirstein Duchy as the chosen royal bride. Stuttering in complete disbelief, Viola struggles desperately to process the massive public exposure of her sudden betrothal. Pressing her for a definitive answer, her frantic father begs to know if she truly agreed to marry the powerful prince. Hesitating for a brief second, she nervously confirms that the ridiculous-sounding news is actually entirely accurate. Explaining the sudden development, she softly reminds her father that she and Alexis have always been incredibly close friends. Admitting the confession caught her off guard, she expresses a genuine, hopeful desire to build a strong romantic relationship moving forward. Overwhelmed by deep emotional relief, her father bursts into dramatic, joyful tears at his beloved daughter's happiness. Following her father's swift formal approval to the royal court, tears of profound joy and apologies for past worries are warmly exchanged. An official royal document grandly solidifies the betrothal, legally and permanently binding Viola and Alexis together. The elegant, sweeping signature on the royal decree officially finalizes the monumental, life-changing contract. Settling back into her routine later on, Viola politely asks someone nearby for a bit of much-needed assistance. Bursting into the room with alarming intensity, her loyal maid Milia loudly declares that they face a very serious situation. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Viola calls out her frantic maid's name in utter and complete confusion. Dropping a massive stack of letters onto the table, Milia urgently begs her bewildered mistress to examine the overwhelming pile. Shockingly, Milia reveals that every single letter in the towering mountain is a high society invitation addressed exclusively to Viola. Recalling Alec's fiercely protective warning, Viola remembers he strictly forbade her from attending any social gatherings without his personal, armed escort. Sifting through the elegant envelopes, Viola realizes with mounting dread that she has never even spoken to most of these desperate senders. Reading a specific, highly detailed letter, she notices an incredibly suspicious request prying for details regarding her private perfume collection. A cold, terrifying wave of paranoia washes over her as she intensely wonders how a complete stranger could possibly know about her deeply secret hobby. Overwhelmed by the massive influx of letters, Viola notes that it has only been a week since their sudden engagement. Swiftly taking charge of the situation, she orders the letters sorted by title and immediately declines those from strangers. Pleased with her quick and decisive action, someone gently praises her excellent handling of the overwhelming mail. Shifting focus back to her beloved hobby, an inquiry arises about whether she plans to create a new fragrance today. Eagerly diving into her craft, Viola excitedly announces that today's creation will be heavily centered around the scent of roses. Pausing thoughtfully, she expresses a strong desire for the final lingering scent to be a rich, comforting vanilla. Considering the delicate balance of aromas, a suggestion is made to mix in an opposing scent to elevate the profile. Agreeing enthusiastically with the idea, she deduces that adding wood notes would perfectly balance out the heavy sweetness. Carefully blending the precious oils, she focuses intently on achieving the exact aromatic harmony she envisions. Envisioning the perfect atmosphere, she aims to capture the essence of a tea party in a garden scented with roses and peonies. To enhance the vibrant floral imagery of fluttering butterflies, she brightens the mixture with sharp, refreshing citrus notes. Hoping to evoke the feeling of forest air riding the wind, she finalizes the base with vanilla heavily mixed with cedarwood. Admiring her completed masterpiece, she proudly declares the complex fragrance to be a completely perfect accord. A sudden, sharp knock violently shatters her peaceful concentration as a familiar voice calls out her name. Startled but amused by the sudden intrusion, she notes the visitor's return just as Alec casually apologizes for interrupting. Smiling warmly at her unexpected guest, Viola graciously welcomes Alec into her aromatic, glass-enclosed sanctuary. Blushing slightly, Alec sincerely confesses his overwhelming, desperate desire to visit her greenhouse every single day. Taken aback by his intense dedication, Viola nervously points out that daily visits might be a bit too much. Chuckling at his relentless determination, she watches fondly as Alec cheerfully plays around in her lush, green garden. Pausing his playful antics, Alec solemnly reveals just how desperately he had longed to visit this place before their engagement. Sensing the deep sincerity in his voice, Viola softly acknowledges his profound and deeply unspoken feelings. Gazing around the lush greenhouse, Alec passionately declares that this very space completely embodies her unique scent. Flustered by his incredibly romantic words, Viola questions the logic behind his bold and deeply personal observation. Stepping closer, Alec admits that standing within the greenhouse makes him feel wonderfully wrapped up in her. Touched that he carved out time from his busy royal schedule just for her, Viola's heart softens considerably. Realizing they must meet halfway in their affections, Viola boldly asks the prince if he wants her to hug him. Closing the distance between them, she gently and affectionately wraps her arms tightly around the stunned prince. Pulling back slightly, she earnestly asks if the warm embrace was good and if it managed to properly convey her feelings. Leaning in to breathe in her scent, Alec breathlessly notes that she is wearing the wonderful new perfume. An intimate, heavy silence falls over them as Alec completely loses himself in her captivating and fragrant presence. Finally breaking the quiet tension, Alec softly admits that the scent is incredibly good while Viola watches him curiously. Suddenly pouting like a deprived child, Alec fiercely complains that she is being completely and utterly unfair to him. Assuming he means the perfume, Viola playfully teases that he simply enjoys smelling his own favorite, crafted scents. Denying her casual assumption, Alec insists that his actual reason for happiness is completely different from what she thinks. Staring deeply into his eyes, Viola boldly confesses that she loves how her perfume mixes flawlessly with his natural scent. Stunned by her incredibly smooth and romantic counterattack, Alec lets out a breathless, wide-eyed gasp of pure shock. Pressing her advantage, she fiercely declares that she refuses to let him settle for just the ambient air when she is right there. Bursting into joyful laughter, Alec completely surrenders to her overwhelming charm, admitting he absolutely cannot compete. Shifting the light-hearted mood instantly, Viola suddenly notices something highly unusual gripped tightly in Alec's hand. Staring intensely at the folded paper, she asks with mounting, terrified dread if he is holding the official Royal Gazette. Spotting something of interest, Alec tells Viola he has something important to show her. Reading the Royal Gazette, Viola discovers that Princess Sylphie and the royal court are furiously praising her perfume as the work of the fragrance goddess. Dismissing the glowing write-up as just another weird article, Viola sighs at the unexpected public attention. Pointing out more columns, Alec notes that the hype surrounding her creations is growing exponentially. The article highlights how Chief Siegfried of the Royal Knights is also making waves with his magical mist. Citizens everywhere rave about the blissful paradise sensation and the instant fatigue-wiping healing effects. Flustered by the exaggerated claims, Viola mutters that the effect actually stems from Leaf's blessing rather than her own skill alone. Emphasizing the crucial detail, Alec points out that the public now connects both phenomena to the mysterious fragrance goddess. Gasping in shock, Viola realizes the populace has finally figured out that she is the mastermind behind the famous perfumes. Smirking at the successful setup, Alec notes that laying the groundwork for her public recognition is proceeding smoothly. Shifting gears smoothly, Alec announces that he has a special proposal to discuss with her. Looking up in curiosity, Viola asks him to elaborate on his sudden proposal. Alec boldly suggests that they open an exclusive perfume specialty store together. Pointing out the sudden influx of mail, he notes how overwhelming the social demands have become lately. Staring at him in sheer disbelief, Viola echoes his suggestion of a specialty store. Acknowledging that social invitations have skyrocketed since her engagement to Alec became public, she weighs her options. Realizing most high society requests simply demand custom bottles of her talked-about perfume, she sighs. Declaring that she refuses to take on those draining requests, Alec warns that she would otherwise collapse from overwork. Reminding her of what the articles actually want, Alec notes that society simply desires to hear directly from her. Pouting slightly, Alec adds that accepting all those external duties would drastically decrease their time together. Teasing him playfully, Viola asks if he is actually feeling jealous. Blushing openly at her bold accusation, Alec readily confesses that yes, he is indeed jealous. Explaining his protective stance, Alec admits he hates the sudden influx of fair-weather status chasers trying to waste her precious time. Smiling softly, Viola remarks that she always had a feeling he possessed a surprisingly strong streak of possessiveness. Reassuring her with total sincerity, Alec vows that his desperate desire to steal every second together is reserved solely for her. Overwhelmed by the profound weight of his intense devotion, Viola wonders whether to rejoice or feel burdened. Reaching out affectionately, Viola calls his name and admits she wants to be right by his side just as much. Pausing with a gentle smile, she accepts the sweet sentiment while marveling at his earnestness. Watching Alec stand gracefully amidst her greenhouse blossoms, Viola thinks he looks utterly picturesque. She wonders idly what specific fragrance could possibly suit a prince who outshines even the most breathtaking flowers. Whining playfully when he interrupts her train of thought, she demands he give back her brief moment of quiet happiness. Chuckling softly, Alec asks why she always ends up coming back to him anyway. Smiling knowingly, Viola admits that their mutual desire to stay together is fundamentally the same. Conceding with a gentle laugh, Alec decides that for now, that shared sentiment is more than enough. Pointing out a practical hurdle, Viola notes that launching a retail store means they will need to mass-produce massive quantities of perfume. Remembering his previous business pitch, Viola addresses the logistical hurdles of running an actual storefront. Fretting over her complete lack of customer service experience, she worries that relying on only one product type will spell disaster. Concluding her anxious thoughts, she insists that trying to manage a full-scale shop entirely by herself is completely impossible. Reassuring her instantly, Alec tells her to leave all the troublesome details entirely to him. Beaming with absolute confidence, Alec declares that he has already devised a brilliant idea to solve their problems.